Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showcasing Shockwave Druid for Ubers. This build is very strong and very safe. It's very hardcore friendly and it's pretty quick to kill Ubers as well. This version of the build is more focused toward the summons in a way that they don't do that much damage, but they are very tanky since I'm maxing Dire Wolf, which gives the wolves and also Grizzly more help. Shockwave is a spell that works with FCR, off-weapon enhanced damage, can proc Crushing Blow, Deadly Strike, Life Leech, Mana Leech, and also the tooltip says right now that I deal 1.4k damage, but it's much higher than that. In the description I'll leave a guide made by Wiz about how Shockwave works, so be sure to check that out to see how the shockwave damage is calculated and how it works. But just so you know, you do a lot more damage than what it shows right there, similar to Blade Shield and Multi-Shot. For stats, you want to have enough strength to wear your gear. Even though strength gives you ED, it's better just to put Vitality and not really focus on strength to get more damage. It's not really worth it. Dex, you want to get enough for gear also. You don't really have anything that uses Dex except your Edge Striker, but if you have a torch or just any piece of gear that gives you Dex, you'll be fine. I would not recommend going max block with a Storm Shield with this, just because the hit recovery frame from blocking in bear form is just awful. And also if you use Runes in your Edge Striker, or have life tap on, you're just gonna sustain more than just blocking, so it's not worth it at all in my opinion. And you put the rest in Vitality, 0 in Energy. For skills, I put nothing in Elemental Tree. You might be tempted to put a point in Flame Dash, but you cannot use Flame Dash in bear form, so if you really want to have a teleport, it's better to have Holy Thunder on switch, so you get teleport charges. For shapeshifting, 1 point in Werewolf, I max Lycanthropy so you get damage and more life. 1 point in Werebear, max Maul because it's a synergy for Shockwave, and obviously max Shockwave. And on the summoning tree, this is where it's a bit different. This version of the build is a bit different. I maxed out Dire Wolf and put 1 point in Grizzly. The reason why I'm not maxing Grizzly is that the Dire Wolf also gives a synergy for, it doesn't say here, but there's a synergy that gives my Grizzly more life. So I have 4 minions that are pretty tanky. My remaining points will be in Oak Sage. Right now I have a total of 14. 1 point in Art of Wolverine for more damage and attack rating for my minions. I tried Spirit of Barbs and it's I don't think it's doing anything, so I'll do not put a point in it. It's not worth it. Playing this version allows you to not really take any damage really. As you'll see in my Uber fight, I took damage like once, and that's because I walked into Diablo's laser. So the leech plus your summon tanking will make this build pretty safe, even without maximum damage reduction. For the FCR and FHR breakpoint, I have currently 79 FCR. The breakpoints for in bear form is 65 and the next one is 99. Getting to 99 is not really possible if you want to actually do damage with ED gear and stuff. So getting to 65 FCR is more than enough. For FHR right now I have 95. Spirit Shield gives you a lot, but I would recommend to get at least 37 to hit the 8 frame breakpoint, because with late game gear sometimes it can be pretty difficult to get a lot of FHR. Best insult for a weapon is a 4 socket Edge Striker. You have multiple options for sockets. If you're using the same setup as I am, I would recommend at least 1 rune for the chance of open wounds. I'm currently using 2 for 50%, and the other 2 sockets are runes for more safety with Life Leech. But for more damage, you could use Pole Rune for more damage to Demon if you're only doing Ubers. The most popular option is 4 Amrunes. It's obviously very cheap because a lot of people are using Drax instead of laying events, since laying events doesn't give you chance to open wound, and Gold Rider is only 10% open wound. That's why I'm using Amrunes. If you have a 1-socket head striker or 2-socket head striker, I will put 1 or 2 Amrunes, but at least 1 Amrune with this setup. You can also use Flesh Render. You do get more skills. You get 2 shapeshifting and 1 druid, a bit of crushing blow, a bit of deadly strike, a bit of chance to open wound, but overall head striker is better just because of that deadly strike chance. But Flesh Render on the early ladder will be cheaper than Edge Striker. But even still, like a CNC Edge Striker is going to be pretty cheap also. For helmet, I'm using a 1-socket Jalal main. A 3-socket Jalal will be best in slot. Sockets really depends on what you need. Either Shamrune, Umrune like I am right now for more res. You can also put enhanced damage jewels for a lot of extra damage, especially if you have 3 sockets. The plus skills, the FHR, the res, the strength, and also energy is really good. You can also use a Spirit Keeper. This is very cheap. Not a lot of people use Spirit Keeper, but you get maximum poison res for Lilith. Lightning Absorb is really nice, especially if you're using Thunder God also, so you have a bunch of Lightning Absorb and res. And Cold Absorb, again, Mephisto, he casts Blizzard and Mage Skeleton that deals cold damage. This is not as good as Jalal, but you can get a 3-socket Spirit Keeper for really cheap and just put ED jewels and you'll still do a lot of damage. You can also use Kira's Guardian. I would say that it's worse than those two, but it's still a good option with 20 FHR, all res, and cannot be frozen. Kira's is pretty cheap on softcore. It's a bit more used on hardcore, so it's going to be a bit more expensive, but still not as expensive as Jalal. Armor, I'm using Fortitude for the FCR, enhanced damage, life, maximum lightning res, all res. It's best in slot for Shockwave Druid. The maximum ED you can get on a Fortitude on pod now is 300. It rolls from 250 to 300, and I got a pretty decent roll. You can also use Shaft Stop for the physical damage reduction and life, but you might need extra FCR since you don't get the 25 from Fortitude. A third option would be to use Rain Woundward. It allows you to cast a second Grizzly to tank. It's not going to do that much damage because I don't max Grizzly, but it's an extra tank. It's a lot of HP. It gets like, I don't know, like 10k life with Oak Sage buff, so it's really good. And you also get the 2 Druid skills. It's going to give you damage and better minions. For gloves, I'm using Laying of Hands for the extra damage to demons, all the Ubers or demons, so you do get a lot of extra damage against them. And the fire is also very nice. I have a 5 all res corruption on those gloves. You can also use Drax, but I would recommend using Laying of Hands instead for Ubers. Simply because with this version, you let your minion tank more than anything. If you wouldn't have max Dire Wolf, your minion would be a lot squishier and would die like every 2 seconds, and Drax would be your lifesaver since you would get target a lot more during the Ubers, but I don't take a lot of damage, and so I don't have to rely on life tap. If you're not using Drax, you don't really have open wound. That's why I'm using open wound chance on my Edge Striker. Using Laying of Hands also allows me to use another curse on the Ubers, like aim damage from my Atmas, which I use for Diablo, or if my Merc can survive, you can use Decrep. I'm using Gold Rider for boots. You don't really need Gold Rider with this setup. It just depends on how much open wound chance you have on the rest of your gear. I like the extra 10% and the crushing blow. I have a 17% fire res corruption on them, but you can use something like Sandstorm just to get strength, vitality, FHR. The boosts don't really matter as much. For belt, I'm using T-God. This is I would say pretty important for Mephisto and also Diablo because of the maximum lightning res and the 20 lightning absorb. You can survive Diablo with it if you have a T-God or high HP belt or something, but for Mephisto, I would highly recommend use this, just in case you do get hit by Mephisto lightning damage. Like right now, I have 90% lightning resistance because of T-God and also Fortitude that gives me 5% maximum lightning res. Dongo is also a good option. It gives you vitality and physical damage reduction, but against Mephisto primarily, this is a lot better. And also Diablo his laser deals physical and lightning damage, but I will still use T-God overall, especially if I can only afford one of the two. You can also use Arachnic Mesh. It's a lot more expensive than the other two, but if you're using a Storm Shield, you'll most likely need FCR from somewhere, and the 20 FCR and all skill is very, very nice. For Amulet, I'm using a 3 shapeshifting plus 10% increased damage to summons. The summon damage is not very useful. It doesn't add that much damage, but it's a nice little bonus, I guess. Best inside would be a 4 shapeshifting with either life or FCR. You can use a Maraz. Right now I have a CNC 27 Maraz. And I like to use Atmas for the amp damage against the mini Ubers and also Diablo. So I can proc amp damage. It's really, really nice. And if you really want, you can pre-buff with a 3 summoning skill amulet. Another option is a Seraph. You can get a 3 all skill. Corruption would be really, really good since you do get extra damage from damage to demon and undead if you want to do declone. Overall, a lot of damage. I think it's the most damage you can get. A plus 1 all skill corruption would give you the most damage output, I believe. And for rings, I'm using a 20 FCR res ring and a Raven Frost with 10 faster run walk. The cannot be frozen is nice. Cold absorb is pretty good. Mana. Attack rating doesn't do anything. The cold damage doesn't do anything. Dex. Without the torch and Annie, the Dex is pretty nice because you'll need Dex to wear the Edge Striker. But if you have a torch or an Annie, you'll be fine. If you can get a life leech with FCR ring, it would be really, really nice. I could not find one, but something with life leech and res and FCR would be the dream, or strength. Or if you want to use also a Dwarf Star, gives you life. Fire absorb is not really needed, I would say, but it's a bit more tankiness. For charms, I'm using 2 shapeshifting skillers because I only have 2. You would want to have a full row of shapeshifting skillers with life or FHR. It's gonna give you a lot of damage, but I only have 2. A Druid Torch and an Annie. Right now I have a Necro Torch because I only did 2 Ubers on this Subtle Self-Found account. And I have a Assassin and Necro, but you would want a Druid Torch. The rest of your charms would be life and res. It just depends on what res you need. Mephisto Conviction Aura reduce your resistances by 125, and you mainly want to have your lightning res to 200. It deals a lot of cold damage also and poison damage, but poison damage is not as needed. Obviously you don't really want to have negative res at all anywhere. But the main thing is lightning damage. You want to have at least 200 lightning res depending on what items you're using. Like right now I'm using T-God and Fortitude, so I want to have 90% lightning res even with his Conviction Aura. So you want to have 215 if you're using those 2 items, so you can have your 90 all res, not all res, lightning res. But make sure to check your resistance stats with the treachery buff on, because you do want to fight the bosses with fade on. For pre-buffing, I'm using treachery for the all res and physical damage reduction that you get from fade. And on switch I have Spirit Sword and Shield. Getting a Hodo would be better, but I don't have one currently on this character, so I'm using Spirit so I can cast my Werebear to get more life, more damage. You can also summon your minions with your pre-buffing, but it's not worth doing that every time they die because they'll die multiple times during the fight. But it's still good to summon them beforehand. For Merc, I'm using a Act 5 Merc because of the Might Aura that gives me more damage and my minions. He's using a Lawbringer for a Decrypt chance on striking. It's really nice to clean up monsters in Ubers. After I kill Diablo, for example, if I kill him first, or in mini Ubers. Using a Shaft Stop with rubies for more life and damage reduction. And for helmets, he's just using a Tal Russia helmet with splash damages. He doesn't really survive Ubers for that long. Getting him like a 2-socket Steel Shade or really investing in your Merc is not really worth it in my opinion. I just happen to have a 3-socket Shaft Stop, that's why he has that. But it's still nice to have more damage from your Merc, and he doesn't really die often in mini Uber since my minions tank a lot. And now to finish the video, I'll be showing you the mini and the Ubers. It went pretty well. Diablo was really nice. He didn't use laser as much as the first time that I killed him. The first time it took me a while, mainly because I didn't have a lot of open wound and he kept regenning. But now with the 2 runes, it went super smooth and he was a lot nicer.
new. Salutations. My brothers will not.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comment, just let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.